Welcome to the workshop, our lifestyle workshop. My name is Dr. Jason Cahill. I am clinic owner and one of the team doctors at Freedom Chiropractic. I have actually been a chiropractor and a health and wellness coach for over 12 years now. Time flies. But one of the things that we love to do is educate our patients. And so one of the first things that, if you're a note taker, this is what you want to write down. Information plus implementation equals transformation. It's a lot of syllables right there, I know. It's going to give you carpal tunnel. But this is very important that you take the information and then you start to utilize this. And so I kind of live by the acronym KISS. Does anybody know what KISS means?
Keep it simple, sweetie.
Yes, sweetie. That was a good way to put it. So I don't usually use sweetie, but yes, keep it simple, sweetie. When it comes to health, I feel that it is imperative to keep it simple, because how many of you have ever gone onto Google when it comes to a health crisis or question? It's not simple, is it? Because you start to go down this rabbit hole of one thing after another, and all of a sudden you went to look for intermittent fasting, and now all of a sudden you diagnosed yourself with like a rare brain tumor or something like that. It happens quickly. And so what we want to do is take a very, very hot topic, which, by the way, raise your hand if you've heard of intermittent fasting before tonight. Keep your hand up if you have attempted intermittent fasting. So some of you. How about anybody that's doing it right now? Not many, a little bit. And now, how about this? If you're like me, anybody that has attempted it, but the entire time you're like, am I doing this right? Because that's where I was. And this was about 3 years ago. So what I did, I started getting a lot of questions from patients as well regarding intermittent fasting. Why? Because it's not a fad, you guys. Everybody has heard of this for a very long time, or at least fasting, I would assume. You look back in the ages, thousands and thousands of years, fasting has been a thing. It's not going anywhere. It's utilized for religion, it's utilized for spirituality, different geographical areas. You look at the father of medicine, Hippocrates, 500 BC, he actually stated that if you are feeding while sick, you are feeding your sickness. So he was one of the first to notice that, okay, when my patients are sick, when they're not feeling well, what's something very common that your body doesn't want to do? You lose your appetite, right? It's so innate that your body knows if I'm spending energy to digest my food, I can't use as much energy to boost my immune system or to get rid of and kill the bacteria or the virus or whatever. So this is not a fad. And a few years ago, I had a lot of patients asking me about this, and I didn't have answers. So I'm one of those that I'm my best guinea pig. I will not get on stage and talk. I will not coach somebody unless I've either tried it myself or done a lot of research on it. So I started to dive into the research, the journals, the videos, the this, that, and the other, and I tried to figure out how can I put this all together and keep it simple, because it's extremely overwhelming when you start to look into it, especially if you're watching different videos and stuff. Everybody has a different opinion, but what I found there's some very common denominators. And so one of the first things that you have to do in order to create success when it comes to intermittent fasting is you have to change your mindset and your perspective on intermittent fasting. It is not a diet. Breathe. Because how many of you like to diet? Like nobody, right? Look at the first 3 letters of the word diet. Hello, it spells it out for you. Nobody wants to deprive themselves. Nobody wants to starve themselves. What we want to do is let our body flourish. And so it's not a diet. What intermittent fasting is it's just a strategic eating window and fasting window. For a lot of you in here tonight, you're not going to change your nutrition at all, especially if you're already eating well. And by the way, I do not care if you're keto or paleo. I do not care if you're vegetarian or carnivore diet. Like, it doesn't matter. As long as you found something that works well for you, stick to it. And then you take your nutrition plan and you implement it in with intermittent fasting if you so choose. That's the biggest thing about tonight. I'm not going to sit up here and preach that you have to do it, but I am going to tell you a lot of the benefits and have the science to back it up. And so the beautiful thing about this is you can make it your own, and you should make it your own, because everybody's different. My fasting time frame might be totally different than yours. I don't know if my patient Paul is here yet. I was just adjusting him before I left, but he works 7 nights in a row. And so he's probably not going to have the same fasting window as me because I sleep at night, right? And so you got to make it your own, and you have to stay consistent. I'm not saying you have to do it every single day, and I'll talk about that as we go on, but you have to stay consistent with it. You have to stay consistent with your nutrition, your exercise, your fasting, whatever it is. When it comes to health, keeping it simple and staying consistent is absolute king. Because now we can dive into the good stuff. Why even bother intermittent fasting? Which from time to time tonight, you're going to hear me call it IF, just because intermittent fasting is also a lot of syllables, and I'm going to tongue tie myself. So why IF? So years ago when I started to do it the right way, the very first thing that I noticed as a benefit of intermittent fasting that I wasn't really even ready for, I wasn't looking for, it was just that morning, day one, I was like, wow, I have a lot more time on my hands. That's nice. Little cherry on top. I don't think that's why you should fast, but think about it. How often do you wake up, you think about what you're going to eat, you prepare what you're going to eat, you cook what you're going to eat, you eat what you're going to eat, and then you clean up after yourself? For me, that was anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes every single day. And so just moving my eating window back, I got a lot accomplished. So that was just one small thing. Now, another big one that I utilize it for, and I have a lot of patients utilize it for, is digestive health. This is huge because, get this, your digestive system was not meant to run at 100 miles per hour every single day. Back that up a little bit. I will be the first to admit, 3 or 4 years ago, I was that coach saying, you should eat 7, 8 small meals a day. Anybody with me? Yeah? Anybody done that before? And if you're still doing that, that's fine. You'll just notice now you put it into your eating window. But I was teaching people eat 7, 8 times a day so you never got hungry so that you wouldn't binge. Well, now that I'm doing this research, I'm realizing that your digestive system needs a bit of a break. And when you give it a break, it starts to heal. It starts to rejuvenate. And so when I have patients that have any digestive issues, constipation, diarrhea, leaky gut, IBS, I recommend the right way to intermittent fast because it will help to almost give your digestive system a reboot. It also builds what's called your microbiome, which is that good, healthy bacteria within your gut. Did you guys know that 80% of your immune system comes from your gut? I am all about your gut health, and this is one easy way to promote a healing gut. Another reason that I personally intermittent fast is for brain health. This is huge. I have a lot of my patients in here. You guys know one of my biggest fears in life is Alzheimer's and dementia. Anybody been affected by Alzheimer's and dementia in your family or friends? It's freaking scary, man. And so I saw my grandma go through it. I saw an uncle go through it. I even had some patients that have had to deal with this. And I don't want to go there. So anything I can do now, at a younger age, proactively, preemptively, to not go down that road, why not? And so what happens when you're fasting, and especially when you're fasting and eating healthy fats, which we'll talk about, when you're doing this, your body starts to create something called ketone bodies. You guys heard of ketone bodies before? Anybody in here that does the keto diet? So perfect. So keto diet plus intermittent fasting, you are going to stay in ketosis longer. You're going to build more ketones. Ketones actually pass through what's called the blood-brain barrier, and they are rocket fuel for your brain. The best resource that you can give your brain is ketones. And so when you're fasting, you produce more of those. Not to mention, when you're fasting, your brain goes into what's called hyper-focus, meaning you have an increased focus, clarity, and acuity. And so on mornings that I might be getting ready to speak to over 100 people that evening, on mornings that I might be writing articles, reading articles, doing research for patients, those tend to be my fasting mornings because it does get you into that state of focus and you get a lot accomplished. And so that's just another good benefit. Another reason I do it is for what's called cellular rejuvenation. The key word here is autophagy. A-U-T-O-P-H-A-G-Y. Autophagy simply means self-devouring. Sounds fun, right? Autophagy means that your cells are eating themselves, but in the right way. So what happens when you go through autophagy is you have these good, healthy cells, and they want to thrive. They want to get all the bad stuff out of there. And then you have these bad, weak, sick, diseased cells. And autophagy means these good ones are coming in and they're eating the bad ones. And then these get stronger while you get rid of the bad cells. It's actually happening within your body all the time. But you really take it to another level during intermittent fasting. And so there was actually a Japanese scientist in 2016 that he won the Nobel Prize for Health and Science because of his work on autophagy. And he was showing that when you go through proper autophagy on a daily basis, you increase healthy longevity for your entire body. So again, I want my patients or anybody in this community to thrive to 90 or 100 or however long you want to be here, not just exist. I don't want you to get to your 80s and just end up sitting in a nursing home. I want you to be in your 80s and you're sitting on the cruise ship. Does that make sense? But what you do now is what gets you somewhere later. That decision is up to you. And so tonight you make the decision and then you start to implement to get the transformation that you want. The last thing, and probably the most common reason that people intermittent fast is what? Absolutely. Absolutely. Weight loss. Here's the thing though, you don't necessarily just lose weight from intermittent fasting because you're a smaller eating window and you reduce your caloric intake. So like I said before, a lot of you, you're not going to change your nutrition. You might not even decrease your caloric daily intake at all, and you can still get all of these other benefits I just talked about, and the weight loss, specifically fat burning benefit. And here's the reason. We're going to go totally nerdy and scientific on you, but I think this is extremely important for you to understand the concept of one hormone, and that is called insulin. Insulin is so incredibly important when it comes to overall health, but specifically weight loss, or the problem these days, weight resistance. And so what happens, no matter what you eat on a daily basis, the second you put something into your mouth, your tongue, your taste buds, your body starts to break that food down. And immediately it turns into glucose and glycogen, which is a good thing because your body and your cells need glycogen for energy and to thrive. But here's the problem, is we're eating a lot in our standard American diet that boosts our glucose way up here. And when your glucose, your blood sugar levels go off the charts, do you guys know what that's actually called? Diabetes. Type 2 diabetes. For those of you that have never been to one of my talks before, that used to be called adult onset diabetes. And years ago, they had to change that to type 2 because it's no longer adults. Your kids are being diagnosed with diabetes because we are lifestyling ourselves in that direction. And so when that food is broken down, the glucose, the glycogen, everything comes into your body, and your body is very, very smart. Your brain is extremely smart, and it knows that you can only have so much sugar in your blood at any moment, or you will die. And so in order to get that blood or that sugar out of the blood, you're eliciting something called insulin. So essentially what insulin does, it's a hormone that's released from the pancreas every time you eat, and it goes out and it grabs sugar or glycogen out of your blood. Your cells need glycogen, and they have these little insulin receptors all around. And so now you have glycogen here, or sugar, in with the insulin. You come over, they attach. So the receptors attach to the insulin, and it's like a lock and key method. When you put the lock or the key in, it opens everything up, and then you dump that glycogen into the cell for energy. But because of our standard American diet, how much processed foods we're eating, how many sugary drinks we're drinking, how many starchy foods and carbs we're consuming on a daily basis, our blood sugar levels are off the charts. Meaning insulin's always working overtime. It's always doing its job. If you didn't produce insulin at all, that's actually type 1 diabetes. Totally different. That's more of a congenital thing. But with the lifestyle part, you have insulin, and what's happening is now it's working so much that finally these receptors right here say, no, I don't want you. You're making me work so hard, I'm going to push you away. And that is called insulin resistance. Now your body knows, I gotta put this sugar somewhere, so it's going to take that insulin and take that sugar, and it's going to store it in fatty deposits. Specifically, right here. We call that visceral fat, and it is by far the most dangerous fat that you have because those surround your organs. Have you guys heard of metabolic syndrome before? Metabolic syndrome is happening because of insulin resistance. And so metabolic syndrome leads to heart disease, cancers, diabetes, obesity, actually Alzheimer's, stroke. There's a lot of things that can happen because of this. So now we want to flip the script. We want to figure out how can we bring insulin down so that we can get it to be more sensitive again. How can we reboot your system? And one of the easiest ways to do that is, number one, look at your nutrition. Hands down. Intermittent fasting is not the savior. It's not the end-all, be-all. It is a portion of what your lifestyle should be with eating proper nutrition. Whole foods, organic, kind of lighter or lower on the carbs. Carbs aren't bad. Carbs are not bad. You can eat carbs, but I like to have high fat, moderate protein, lower carbs, essentially. Some of you, that's going to be a little bit different, but that will help first and foremost. The next thing you can do is you start to intermittent fast. Because when you're fasting, you don't have to elicit an insulin response because there's no food. There's no sugar in there, and so your body's not going to throw out insulin. So as insulin comes down, human growth hormone and something called catecholamines go up. Another $10 word right there. Essentially, catecholamines, you've heard of these. Norepinephrine, epinephrine, the hormone called adrenaline. These all go up as insulin goes down. Human growth hormone goes up as insulin goes down. And because there is no sugar in your body or in your blood to use as energy, human growth hormone and these catecholamines go into your fatty deposits, and they take fat to use for energy, and then the catecholamines are used as energy as well. So now all of a sudden, not only are you becoming more insulin sensitive, you're becoming a fat burner rather than a sugar burner. The longer you do that, you continue to burn more and more fat, and you don't need to rely on the sugar. And all of a sudden, your body starts to make these giant transformations because it's done what's called a metabolic switch, and you're a fat burner. We'll talk about exercise, we'll talk about everything else with that, but as far as the nerdy science goes, with insulin, does that make sense? You guys are really quiet. It's creeping me out right now. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is weird. So, any questions on that part? I know I really don't answer a lot of questions, but I know that's like, I want you to understand that. And if you don't, we can talk about it another time too. But that's the benefit of it. And so you look at, oh yeah.
So does that mean you crave less carbs?
At some point, if you do it right. And so, with intermittent fasting, it's kind of like anything. It's kind of like detox, or it's kind of like just changing your nutrition in general. It usually takes a 2 to 4 week adaptation phase. And so we'll talk about, it's kind of like for the clarity, the mental clarity, I'll tell you right now that I am very hyper-focused when I'm fasting. You probably won't be in the beginning. You're probably actually going to hate me for the first couple weeks because there's a little something called brain fog. You heard of that? You're going to detox a bit. You're going to have some cravings. You might even dehydrate yourself a bit because you're not used to this yet. But you stick to it, you stay consistent, you'll start to make the metabolic switch. Because then you have the benefit of time, you have the benefit of digestive health, you have the weight loss, the insulin sensitivity, you have all these things, so you're like, okay, just teach me how to do the freaking thing, right? So let's go. We're going to dive into this. The first thing you have to decide as an intermittent fasting warrior is, what is your fast? What is your time frame? How long do you want to go? And this is totally up to you. And so for a lot of people, I wouldn't say a lot of people, but for some people, you might start with 12 hours of fasting, 12 hours of your eating window. Meaning, in this 12 hours, you're not eating food. In this 12 hours, you're getting all of your caloric intake. The reason that some people start with 12 is if you're overwhelmed just thinking about going 16 or 20 hours, then start with 12. Because you're going to show yourself, this isn't that bad. I can do this. For females, some females, you might want to start with the 12 hours if you've had hormonal problems or hormonal imbalances, any sort of thyroid issues in the past. Because have you guys seen that, well, if you're a female, you cannot fast. Anybody seen that before? If you do it wrong, you're right. If you do anything wrong, you shouldn't do it, right? And so if you're a female with maybe some hormonal issues in the past or thyroid issues, and all of a sudden you try to go right to the warrior diet, which is 20 hours of fasting and only 4 hours of eating, yep, that's probably not going to bode well for you. But if you start over here and you slowly work your way up, that's what my wife did. She started at 12 hours, and then she's like, oh, this is pretty easy. She jumped to 14 hours. And then what I'd like to get most people to, if your body allows you to, and if you're okay with it, 16 hours. So it's called the 16-8 intermittent fast. It's probably the most common. Not only is it the most common, but that's where they start to show you get the most scientific benefit or physiological benefit. At 12 hours, you're going to get the microbiota. You're going to start to repair your gut. At 12 hours, you're going to get some digestive health stuff. You're going to get the time stuff. You'll get a little bit of the weight loss. But at 16 hours, that's where they show you get the most physiological benefit with everything else that I just talked about. And so with that 16-8, I'm just going to use my example. You don't have to follow this. This is just easy for me. I know it like the back of my hand, and it'll make sense to you. My goal on days that I am fasting, so let's say I fast on a Wednesday morning, okay? That means, this is a bad example because it's Tuesday night and I'm not even going to get home until 9 o'clock, but bear with me. So that means I will be done eating on Tuesday night at 8 p.m. In my world, this is my example. And I don't eat any food again until noon the next day. 8 p.m. to noon, that's a 16-hour fast. Everybody with me right there? So here's the deal with that, is some days I'll go 17, some days 18. There are some days that I'm not feeling it, and I just abort mission. It's okay. Live to fight another day. You want to be diligent, not militant. Don't just beat yourself up if you were meant to fast this day and you didn't do it. But also, here's another thing. Don't drown your sorrows in McDonald's if you failed that one day. Y'all with me? So be smart. Think of food as health, not just something that comforts you. And so I go 8 p.m. to noon. Now, here's the thing, is with that, there's the Warrior 20 and 4. There's actually the OMAD. You guys heard of OMAD? 1 meal a day. Anybody tried it before? Have you tried it? Whew. I'm not there. One of those things where it's like make it your own. I don't want to make that my own. Like that to me sounds a lot. But if you do it, when you do it, you want to let me know how it goes, go for it. What that means is you essentially fast all day, and then you get all of your calories in one meal. So I have looked at what is my BMR, my basal metabolic rate, which I highly recommend you guys go online. There's so many trackers. Find out what your BMR is. That's the amount of calories your body needs to function. If you did not get out of bed, for you just to live, you still need a certain amount of calories every single day. So you want your BMR, and then you want to find out what are your normal caloric, or how many calories should you consume a day. It depends on, are you weight maintenance, weight gaining, or weight losing, right? And so that'll kind of determine. It also is determined by how active are you. What do you do on a daily basis? But I highly recommend doing that. And so for me, if it's weight maintenance, I'm anywhere between 2,700 and 3,000 calories a day. The idea of me eating 3,000 calories in one sitting is completely overwhelming. If I get overwhelmed, I curl up into a ball and I cry. And so I'm not going to do that because I know myself. And so for me, I like the 16-8, 18-6. That's why I'm a science health doctor, not a mathematician. But that's where I thrive. And I personally don't do it every day. That's the other thing you have to determine. What is your window, and are you going to do it every single day? I usually do not recommend people to do it every day because it can become a little bit more overwhelming and people get really stuck on it. Not to mention when I was doing this, I wasn't getting my caloric intake every day. And this is when, I think, is Eric here? I think he's here, right? He's back there. So that's when I reached out to Eric, because he's one of the many coaches I trust and love at OTF. And I said, dude, what am I doing wrong? I have these goals, but I don't feel right. And he's like, you're not eating enough calories. And so I realized that I had to really stick to that. And so you have to understand, or you have to find out, do you want to do this every day? The other reason I normally don't have people do it every day is because if inadvertently you start to reduce your caloric intake too much, you will actually start to slow your metabolism down. And so for me, I do more of like an alternate day fast, or maybe 2 or 3 days a week. That might be different for you, but this is my story, so lay off me, okay? So that's another thing. The third thing you have to determine, when are you going to fast? So you know your hours as far as 16 hours of fasting, but what does that look like for you? Are you 8 to noon? Or are you like my guy Paul, who works the night shift, so he needs to eat then? Like, what is it? And so you just have to write down what's your hours and when are you going to start, and therefore you add 16 or whatever, you know when you're going to finish. The reason I like 8 p.m. to noon is because once you're done eating, that's when your fast starts. And I'm not hungry before I go to bed if I've done it right and I eat enough food. And then for the majority of my fast, guess what I'm doing? Sleeping. Keep it simple, sweetie. Like, set yourself up for success. It's that easy. And so then I wake up at 6:30, and I just start my day. I'll go into what you can have during a fast, but that's the big stuff.
So during that time, when do you work out?
Yes.
Do you work out in the middle of that fast?
I'll get there. Because, yes, we'll tackle that.
That would determine the window.
It can, depending on what your goals are and how you want to go about it. So it can determine your window. So we'll get to exercise and fasting. Does that make sense as far as just picking your window?
How would you say, because you might be tired, you might be really hungry, what are the symptoms that you're looking at? You're like, I probably shouldn't work, I should eat, versus, okay, I can go through this, I can do this.
So in the beginning, you're just know that you're probably going to have hunger pains, because you have something called ghrelin in your body. It's another hormone that tells you when to eat or that I'm hungry. But the thing with ghrelin is it doesn't actually say I'm hungry because I don't have calories. It says I'm hungry because this is the time that I normally eat. And so when you get kind of that hunger stuff, just know that you can battle through that, especially for the first week or two. Now, one thing I would say is, as far as like a pro tip, is if you're afraid of being hungry or you just want to satiate yourself longer, make sure your last meal of the evening or the day or whatever it is very high in good healthy fats and a lot of fiber. Because fat and fiber will keep you satiated and full. Not to mention, those good healthy fats, when you're fasting, will turn into ketones. Now, other than that, it's extremely subjective. You know your body. You've been working out, you've been doing a lot of things for a long time. So you're going to know when to bail or when it's just like, I need to just push through this. Here's another thing. To increase your success rate, another pro tip, stay busy. I don't fast on weekends because all I want to do is like eat my house. And so I tend to do intermittent fasting on like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings because I'm so busy at the office. Next thing I know, I'm done. I'm ready to go, and it's easy. And so just keep yourself busy so that you're not thinking about the food, especially in the beginning. So good questions. So now let's get into some other things as far as during your fast. What can you consume? That's important, mindset-wise. What can you consume? Because if you look at what you can't consume, guys, it's like everything. You're fasting, right? So the first thing you can consume, water. And a lot of it. Most of you are dehydrated anyway on a daily basis. And so now you're taking your food away in the morning, you get about 25% of your hydration on a daily basis from food. And so you're still going to get that, but it's just later in the day. So drink a lot of water. Rule of thumb, take your body weight, divide it by 2. That's how many fluid ounces you should try to consume a day. How many of you work out at Orange Theory Fitness? you should drink a heck of a lot more water on the days you work out. You know what I mean? I call it sinking the daddy. My goal is to see how far down on my shirt can I get the sweat. So for my patients, if you've never gone to Orange Theory Fitness, you've got to go see Eric before you leave and talk to him and get your butt in there and just try it out. It is awesome. So that is number 1, drink water. Number 2 thing that you can consume, green tea. Excellent. The things that you can't consume is just anything that has caloric intake, because that's going to break your fast, anything that will spike your insulin, and anything that creates the metabolic switch from fat burning to sugar burning. And so green tea has no caloric intake, and as a matter of fact, they've shown that the caffeine helps to kind of speed up weight loss as well. With the green tea, you add nothing to it. Nothing. Nothing. Green tea. No stevia. I'll get to that in a second, because it's a gray area. I know, but don't worry. I'll redeem myself here in a second, because I know that hurts. So green tea, water. I will say, if you're feeling very dehydrated when you are fasting, it's either you're not drinking enough water, so track your water, or you might be low on electrolytes. And so one thing that you can put into your water is pink Himalayan sea salt and cream of tartar. Not tartar sauce, you're not a fish stick, cream of tartar. Pink Himalayan sea salt is sodium, cream of tartar is potassium. And so a lot of times, and this is what happened to me a while ago, I was telling Dr. Megan, man, I am chugging water, and I don't know, I don't feel right, and I was just low on electrolytes. So if I have like this big daddy right here, this is what I carry around with me, this is 40 ounces, so I'll probably take like a 1/4 teaspoon of each and put it in here. You can do that in a smaller glass as well. I'll just warn you, you're drinking sweat, essentially. It tastes like you wrung out your gym sock and you drank it, because that's what electrolytes are. Sweat is electrolytes. And so just know that. Dilute it a little bit more if you want to. But that is great. If you're getting kind of like distended or bloated, that's a lot of times your body's trying to retain water, especially in the beginning. And so get that into your water, and that will help quite a bit. So you have water, you have green tea, and then the last one, the one that goes back and forth, and people freak out until I say it. You can drink black coffee. Yes. Woo! Oh my gosh, otherwise you're going to kill me, right? Black coffee with nothing. No cream, no half and half, no coconut oil, no MCT oil, no honey, no cinnamon, no, what else do you guys put in your coffee? No stevia. I'll get to that at the end. What else?
Espresso.
Is what?
Espresso shows coffee.
Well, no, you can do coffee, or espresso. I was thinking like a latte. Can't do that, but you can do normal espresso beans, for sure. Anything else that you add to your coffee, you just can't. Go.
Collagen?
No collagen. Here's the thing though, you can utilize all of that stuff in your eating window. There you go. Because collagen has calories. Because cream has calories. So I am the bearer of bad news for a lot of people. Because they're listening to the initial part of the talk, which I've given this talk like 20 times. And they're like, oh, I've been fasting my entire life because I didn't ever eat breakfast. I'm like, what do you put in your coffee? Cream and sugar? Like, you've never fasted a day in your life. Not once. And I'm sorry, but it's the truth. If you want to do a strict, strategic, physiological fast, you add nothing. But here's the thing, is the caffeine and the polyphenols in the coffee help with energy, which help get you through your fast, and they help burn more fat as well. So you're getting a lot of benefit. The reason it is no stevia or any other sweeteners, whether artificial or natural, is because it is a massive gray area. So what happens, especially things like Splenda and aspartame, you eat those or you consume those, and they're so sweet. Yes, they're fake, but they're so sweet that they actually trick your brain. Your brain's like, oh my gosh, you just gave me a sugar bomb. I need to spike insulin right away. Even though there's literally no sugar that you just ingested, you now have an insulin spike and you made the metabolic switch. Does that make sense? And so, no, it's not a calorie, but it is creating an insulin response, which is why gray area, I keep it out because I want to keep it simple. Because if you just remember the 3 things are the 3 things are the 3 things, you'll succeed with your fast. Any questions on that?
You eat something that's just fat. Why is that going to keep you out of ketosis?
It's not ketosis.
Okay.
It's going to kick you out of your fast. Big difference.
Can you put lemon in your water?
You can. You can put lemon, sorry, I was pointing at you and you were talking. You can put lemon and lime in your water. You can actually put apple cider vinegar in your water as well. I just don't say those until somebody asks, because it's the way our brain works. It's like once you get more than 2 or 3 things, you start to just screw everything up. And so really stick to the water, the green tea, and the coffee, but you can add that in and it won't break your fast, as long as you're not like squeezing an entire lemon in there. It's more like a lemon slice. Anything else?
What about carbonated water?
Carbonated water is okay, because that's just an air pocket. It's just a fizz. Here's the thing, with what I found, things like LaCroix are actually okay, because they're aroma essenced, I think is what they call it, meaning that they actually take the fruit and they boil it, and then the vapors come up and it infuses into the water. So you're getting a very slight taste with it, but you're not actually breaking your fast because there's no caloric intake. And so you can do that. Here's one. What about supplements, right? How many of you take supplements? So here, multivitamins and any other vitamins you can actually take during your fast. However, I don't personally recommend it for a couple reasons. Number one, if you're anything like me, if I take my supplements on an empty stomach, I feel nauseous. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that because that makes me feel like crap. Number 2 is for my patients, I recommend things like fish oil you take with vitamin D3 and multivitamins, because that fat helps to increase your absorption rate. Fish oil has caloric intake. Fish oil, like you take 2 capsules of what we sell over there, it's 30 calories right there. So you will break your fast. So here's another thing. With that, I take my supplements after either my first or last meal. But if my last meal is at 8 p.m., that means I need to take my supplements right there. This is what some of you saw, I was talking to Annie from Orange Theory Fitness. She said, I had no idea that I would eat at 7 or 8 o'clock, and then I'd take my supplements at like 9 or 10 o'clock right before bed, and that's when she was taking her fish oil. That's when your fast starts, because that's the last thing you consumed as far as calories. Does that make sense? So that's a big one. I just tend to push it off more. Medications, that's when you need to talk to your prescribing doc. Because there are quite a few that they actually say or want you to take on an empty stomach, and then there's others that you should not be taking on an empty stomach. And some of them, I don't know if they break your fast or not, because there are different capsules and gelatin things that meds and supplements are put in that can break your fast. So that's something, if you really want to stay strict with this, you have to talk to them and find out what do they say. I'm going to go no. Only to make it easy, because I like the probiotic with the vitamin D as well. And I like the D and the probiotic with the fish oil. So I think just to keep it simple.
The daily detox.
Ooh, I have to do research on that. We have a product called Daily Detox. It is literally a cellular detox and a body detox. You might not even need to do it if you're fasting. You might notice that your body's starting to kind of do its own detoxification. So, any other questions on that, on what you can eat? Yeah?
What if you're on metformin?
Talk to your doctor. I am not a pharmacist or a medical doctor. I do not prescribe meds. So I'm like, the commercials. Like, I keep it PC. So you gotta talk to your doctor. How about exercise? Somebody mentioned exercise. Can you exercise during your fast? Yes. Yes. Because think about it. Insulin is at an all-time low. Human growth hormone is at an all-time high. What does human growth hormone do? It helps to build muscle. It helps to repair muscle. And it helps to keep your muscle safe during a fast. I mean, think about athletes. What do they do with human growth hormone? They cheat. right? That's how important this is. And now you're taking this thing that they want to inject into their body, and you're taking it to a whole nother level. And so take advantage of what your body's doing. Not to mention the catecholamines, which I talked about. Those will protect you and give you energy. If you're scared that you're going to just like crash, you don't need to be. Because your body can go weeks without food, you guys. We are so trained and brainwashed that we have to eat so many meals every single day. It's not that way. I mean, you watch Survivor, right? They can go a month without food. I don't want you going in that direction. But you can actually go anywhere from 24 to 36 hours in a fast before you start to break down the protein within your muscle. What actually happens is, for some of you, you're in great shape. You don't have a lot of visceral fat, which is great. So what your body is going to do is go into lean muscle, take the fat out of it, so you create more lean muscle. What does lean muscle eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
Fat.
Yeah, it's a beautiful cycle that's going to keep you healthy and keep you at your fighting weight, is what I call it. And so, yes, you can exercise. The Journal of Physiology states that exercise during a fasted state releases fat from your muscle and fatty deposits into the bloodstream, and it is burned for energy. And so, yes, you're building muscle, but you're also utilizing fat for your energy. The Journal of Translational Medicine took two groups consuming the same amount of calories. This is very important. They had an intermittent fasting group and a non-intermittent fasting group. The IF group experienced more fat reduction while preserving muscle growth. The reduced insulin during fasting allows for increased HGH, which protects muscle and allows for muscle growth and recovery. So you can absolutely, I'm a huge fan of fasted cardio. So even if you don't want to go the entire morning or evening or whatever it is with your fast and still try to work out, at least wake up, do some cardio in a fasted state, and then eat right away if you want to. So if you can even do fasted cardio every day, even without doing a full 16-hour fast or 20-hour fast, you're going to get a ton of benefit from that. Now, here's one thing where I found that I have to be careful is when I do an OTF workout. Because I, on average, burn like 650 to 750 calories. And if I'm already fasted, whoa, that's a lot of caloric burn right there. And so if I go to like a 6:15 or a 7:30 a.m. class, you 5 a.m.ers, you have that class. That is not my jam right there. But if I go to a 6:15 or a 7:30, I'll go fasted just because I'd roll out of bed. But then I'll eat something right away just because I don't feel comfortable going until noon. That's me. If I go to like the later morning class or even the Friday happy hour with Eric, I'm eating before that something just because I just felt like I do better with it. You can try, you can kind of make it your own, but that's me. So does that make sense?
That's why I asked, 'cause I do a lot of noon classes.
A lot of what?
Noon classes.
Okay.
So I do right there where breaking the fast at the same time is
Yeah.
trying to work out. So
In an optimal world, if you want the most bang for your fasting buck, you want to work out at the very tail end of your fast, because that's when insulin is at the absolute lowest, human growth hormone is at the absolute highest, and then right after that, you can consume your protein shake or your caloric intake to rebuild the amino acids, to rebuild the muscles. Does that make sense? Perfect world doesn't usually happen for most of us though. So you just have to kind of play with this a little bit in the beginning to figure out what works best for your schedule, for your kids' schedule, because that can be hard. I get that. You're gonna fail forward a couple times in the beginning, and that's totally fine. You'll start to hone in on it. Do you have something, Mary? Oh, sorry.
So is it okay to do like a 12-hour and then a 16-hour and then a 12-hour?
Yeah, so she asked if you can kind of go back and forth. You can, but if you want the most benefit, you want the consistency. So I wouldn't say that you want to do that back and forth all the time. I would stick to one, and then after maybe weeks or a month, like a couple months of doing one fast, if you're like, I don't like this anymore, I want to go back down to 12, then I would do that. But going 16 to 12 to 18 to 14, that you're just not going to get the same benefits out of it, just because it stresses out your body even more. So the last thing on this is those catecholamines, which I was talking about. So catecholamines are actually produced by your sympathetic nervous system. It is a stress response. So sympathetic nervous system, you guys probably know better as your fight or flight, right? You guys heard of fight or flight? And so your sympathetic nervous system is a branch of your central nervous system. So your central nervous system is your brain stem, which is right here. That is your brain stem, right below that bone that drops off behind your ear. You can't feel it, you can't see it, you have it, otherwise you'd be dead right now. So believe me, you got brain stem, spinal cord, and then the nerves that come off of your spinal cord. The problem is some of you have fasted or have tried it or might try it now. Some of you have eaten well and you didn't get the benefits. Some of you have exercised and you're hitting this weight loss resistance. And a lot of times it's because your neurology is a mess. Because for a lot of Americans right now, we are always riding high in this fight or flight. Sympathetic nervous system is fantastic in short bursts, like a fast. You do not want to be living there because then it starts to change everything. It starts to promote weakened immune system, more sickness and disease, improper sleep, high blood pressure. And so that's a big issue. And so there's a missing link. So I'm gonna take a step back with this because what I've seen with a lot of my patients is there is a massive missing link between lifestyle and also what's happening on the inside. That is so important. Because when you look at how we're hardwired, you line up 100 practitioners, chiropractors, physical therapists, massage therapists, neurologists, you name it, we got it. And you ask them, what is the single most important organ in your body? Guess what they're going to say? Your brain. Your brain is what tells your heart to beat, your lungs to breathe, your pancreas to produce insulin, your other organs to produce adrenaline, those catecholamines, for you to burn fat, for you to have pain in symptoms or no pain and symptoms. For you to be mobile, for you to move your big toe, everything comes from your brain. And the way it communicates is it flows down your spinal cord, out those nerves, to everything. And so you can try to fast, but if your hardwiring is all mixed up, you're just going to bang your head against the wall and wonder, why is this not working? Why does none of this ever work for me? And it's because you haven't ever looked from within. When you talk about fasting, when you talk about exercise, when you talk about nutrition, when you talk about medications, that is an outside-in approach. We need to look from above down, inside out. And this system here is so incredibly important. It is actually so incredibly fragile that you were built with protection. You are literally built to go into daily battle called life every single day. Because you look at this, you have a helmet or skull protecting your brain. You have this beautiful Kevlar vest or spinal column protecting your spinal cord. We know anatomically speaking, from front to back, this spinal column should be nice and straight. From the side, it has got to have very specific curves. If you lose any of that, you're also going to start to impinge on the nerve root. Because when your spine has proper mobility and proper alignment, you create these nice, beautiful openings for the nerve root to go out and communicate with everything else. And so if you want the most out of your body, you've got to take care of your body from within. I think one of the easiest analogies that I personally use is a garden hose effect. So, do you mind if I steal you real quick? Can I have you come up here? And so, garden hose effect. Let's say that Miss Cindy here, who has been a patient of ours, I've been forever, way long. So let's say she's like a faucet, right? She is a faucet that needs to get communication, flow, and resource out to you guys. You're my grass and you're my pretty flowers, okay? Y'all with me? So just kind of sway in the wind real quick. There you go, beautiful, very meditational. So now, what I'm going to do is take a garden hose, and she's got to plug herself in. So plug that hose into your faucet right now. There you go. I was like, keep it PG. So now she's plugged into the faucet, right? And when we turn that faucet on, now that water comes out, and I spray you guys, and what do? You grow. You thrive. You're doing everything you were meant to do. If at any point I come over and I turn, oh really? I turn off the faucet or I kink the garden hose, what happens to the flow that's supposed to allow you guys to grow? It stops or it's impeded, it's interfered with. And so now you're not getting that proper flow. Does that mean you're going to die tomorrow? No. As grass, you might start to turn brown. You'll wilt a little bit, maybe get a little bit patchy, but you're not going to die tomorrow. The longer this interference goes undetected and uncorrected, now what's going to happen to you? You're going to die. And you will die earlier than you were supposed to. Until the landscaper, the green thumb, comes in and says, no, the faucet's on. It's not a faucet issue. It is a garden hose issue. You're kinking the hose. So my job is to remove that kink, start to get the flow to you guys again, and now what do? You grow again. You regenerate, you rejuvenate, and you're happy, and you go through the cycle. The exact same thing happens here. You're supposed to, everybody give Cindy a round of applause. So you are supposed to get this flow from the faucet, your brain, down the garden hose, out your sprinkler system or your nerve roots, and it's all protected by this thing right here. What do you guys do on a daily basis that is really mean to this thing right here? Slouch, sit, what else? What? Phones, slouching, slips and falls, sports injuries. How many of you have had a car accident, even a minor whiplash injury, even 20 years ago, 10 years ago? And for most of us, when we get it when we're young, what do we do about it? Nothing, because I'm invincible. Well, that whiplash plays a major factor in your spinal column and your spinal cord, and therefore your nerve root. So now all of a sudden, you have something like this going on. Instead of having that nice, beautiful curve, we call this your banana right there, because this makes sense. A banana is supposed to have a what? And if you try to straighten out a banana, what are you going to end up with? And within hours, what color does the banana start to turn? Because it's doing what? It's oxidizing and dying, right? Your spine is supposed to have a curve. If because of bad posture, oh my gosh, this one is horrible. We have here, and then we have here, right? Because of bad posture, because of trauma, because of your kids wearing giant backpacks that weigh 175 pounds, because of slips and falls, because of ladies carrying your babies, guys carrying your babies. Like all of these things add repetitive trauma on your spine. Next thing you know, it starts to compensate. It starts to misalign. It's called a subluxation. A subluxation of the spine is a misalignment, which in turn does what to that spinal cord in the central nervous system? It crushes it. At some point when that's happening, your brain is going to tell your body, ouch, this hurts. If this happens, does that mean it's going to happen tomorrow? It's kind of like the grass. It might take time. But over time, when this goes undetected and uncorrected, now this starts to get worse and worse and worse. And I can't just look at this woman that I've never met before and be like, ooh, I don't think you have a banana. It doesn't work like that. You can't see through people. And so one of the most important things you can do is actually look. Because if this is going on, there is so much that you can do to start to restore it. So now let's take this, for example. Let's say somebody comes into my office with only lower back pain. Because of that, they can't work out. They have weight loss resistance and some digestive issues because all of the nerves down here go to your digestive system as well. So they come in for that symptom only, but I see this. I could adjust them every day till the cows come home and get nowhere unless we start to unkink the hose up by the faucet. Does that make sense right there, you guys? It blows my mind how incredibly physiologically and anatomically important this entire structure is to give you proper function, which will then lead to health. And yet we as a community or as a culture, we're not taught to look at this. We're not taught to dig deeper. And if there is something going on, what do they say? You just have to live with it. Or there's a pill for that to at least help with your pain. Pain is not the problem. Pain is not the cause. Sleep issues is not the cause. Digestive issues is not the cause. Infertility is not the cause. There's usually a cause deeper that is creating the symptom. A symptom is your body's way of saying what? Help. Help. There's a problem. But instead we love to ignore it and we love to mask it with pills, potions, and lotions. I don't care if you fast every single day. I don't care if you do 100 burpees a day. I don't care if you start to eat an entire thing of spinach every day. That will not correct something like that. In our office, we don't ever even adjust the human spine until we sit down and we do a thorough evaluation of this, because it's so fragile, so important, and such a difference maker. The first time somebody comes into our office, we do a full evaluation. Consultation, I'm talking back in the day. Because if you say, yeah, I had a motor vehicle accident 20 years ago, what'd you do about it? Nothing. I see this, that's probably where it started. Just because you didn't feel it back then didn't mean that's when it started. So we do a full consultation, we do a neurological exam, and then we take x-rays of the spine. I called Colorado Springs Imaging a couple weeks ago and I pretended that my chiropractor wanted me to get x-rays. And I said, how much does this cost for me out of pocket? And they said, full spine x-rays, $200 to $225, depending on the views. In our office, that initial visit is $79. Because not only do I want to keep health simple, I want to keep it effective, cost-effective, most importantly. Then and only then do we have you come back for a follow-up appointment where we start to walk you through your first treatment. And the reason we wait on that is because we want to know, we do line analysis to the degree and the millimeter to see where is your spine compared to where we know it should be. Is that impacting your overall goals? Whether it's weight loss, whether it's reducing or eliminating pain, getting more motion, getting up and down from the floor with your darn kids. Like, what can we do to get you towards your goals? As we walk you through that first adjustment, that gives us an understanding of how does your body respond. After that, we set up one last appointment, because that's the appointment where you come back and we sit down and we go over your x-rays. It drives me nuts. How many of you have had an x-ray or an MRI or a CT scan or whatever, and you never actually saw it? Like, a picture is worth 1 billion words. So why did they just throw a bunch of medical jargon at you? I think it's just to confuse you, so you're so confused you don't ask any questions. They're like, yes, we got them. I want you to see the x-rays. I want you to see the analysis. I want you to become your own doctor. Because once you do that, it saves you a lot of time, money, and you're going to start to implement to get transformation. You don't have to wait until there's a problem. You just have to take action, implement. Even if you don't have symptoms, it's always good to know what's happening on the inside. So I look forward to meeting a lot of you within the office so we can really take your health to the next level. The last thing, now that I kind of went on a tangent, because I do that because you can see I'm very, very passionate about your health from the inside, because it makes a huge difference. But the last thing you need to know about intermittent fasting, kind of back on track, is how to break your fast. So it's much like what can you consume during the fast. There's 3 things. How to break your fast. I try to keep this extremely simple. I mean, you can essentially break your fast with anything that you want, but if you want to get the most bang for your buck, what I would recommend is, first of all, when it's time to break your fast, drink a cup of organic bone broth. I don't care if it's beef or chicken. I don't care if it's hot or cold. Bone broth is very good because it's got the calories that will kind of create that insulin response. It's going to break your fast, but broth has collagen. Whoever said collagen before, this is when you rock your collagen out. And so collagen is the most abundant protein in your body and is what keeps your connective tissue healthy. So when you think about things like your cartilage, your joints, your ligaments, your gut, your skin, your eyes, even hair and nails, it keeps these things very strong. And so this is the protein for the fountain of youth. And so when you break your fast with that, you're going to eat or drink that on an empty stomach, and it's going to actually start to rejuvenate your mucosal lining. And so especially if you've had any sort of IBS or digestive issues, that's huge. The second thing, if you're vegetarian, vegan, or plant-based, then obviously you're not doing bone broth. I would do apple cider vinegar. That actually will not break your fast, but it's going to get very similar effects to bone broth and collagen as far as your digestive system and your gut. all about the gut. So take care of your gut. So you either got ACV or bone broth, and then the first thing that you eat, I do one of two things. I'll either do a Granny Smith apple, or I will do a scoop of plant protein. So the reason, Granny Smith apples are extremely low on the glycemic index, meaning they don't give you a huge blood sugar spike, therefore they don't give you a huge insulin spike. What it's going to do is just wake up the insulin, wake up your digestive system. It's going to bring it up, but if you just go and say, yes, I did it. I did 16 hours. Let's go get a Whopper. You're going to have this insulin spike up here, and you will crash hard. And then you're going to call me and be like, dang, you told me so. It happens. And so you want to slowly bring that insulin up. Then it'll start to stabilize. And then about anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes after that, you'll eat your first normal full meal. The other thing I might do is plant protein. Now the reason that that's good is because, again, it's protein based, and so you're not going to have a huge insulin spike. But I don't do whey protein, A, because personally I've been plant-based since Thanksgiving, just something my wife and I started to do, so I'm sticking with it. So I do plant-based, obviously. But even if I wasn't plant-based, I wouldn't be necessarily doing whey protein. You can, it's not the end of the world, but whey is dairy. And a lot of people have a huge dairy sensitivity, which will create a lot of inflammation. You are extremely sensitive to everything at the very end of a fast, and so you're more sensitive to dairy, which you're already usually more sensitive to anyway. And so it can really bump up that inflammatory response. And so for me, I do a plant-based protein, or I will do a Granny Smith apple. About 30 minutes after that, while I'm making my first meal, I jam-pack that first meal with a ton of calories, a ton of fats, good healthy proteins, and then you just eat during your eating window. It is get your calories in that 8 or 12 or 10 hours, and that's that. It's that simple. Some of it's not that simple, but overall, it's that simple. And so the keys are don't binge, don't ruin or sabotage yourself, drink a lot of water, and just know your caloric intake. If you start to get really fatigued or lethargic, start to count your calories. I don't like you being there all the time because you can drive yourself nuts, but if you can just stick to those simple rules and just know when is my fasting window, when is my eating window, how many days a week, and how am I breaking it, what am I taking during, you're going to be extremely successful. That's that. And so if you have